hardest franchises that I ever had to review while having this channel for the past few years are DC movies. And the reason why they're so hard to review is because they have a special place in my heart. And it's hard for me to judge a product that I love so much. During the DCEU era, there were plenty of movies. Well, there's obvious movies that I'm like, this is just plain out. But like other movies, I just can't, for the love of me, like just be outright negative with it. I always try to give a movie grace, including DC, because of the potential they have toward the audiences and me knowing the stories and the characters. I love Superman, I love Batman, The Flash, Wonder Woman, Teen Titans, all that. I grew up with those characters. I love those characters. I know what stories they can do to bring an audience, to the theaters. So that's why it's just pretty hard for me to try to criticize and give my thoughts on most DC movies. Now, before I give my thoughts on Supergirl, I think it's very important to let y'all know where I stand when it comes to James Gunn's DCU universe. I thought Creature Commandos was solid. I enjoyed watching Bride of Frankenstein. The actress that plays her was Kal-El's Superman's mom from Krypton, from Man of Steel, and now she's Bride of Frankenstein. I like her. I also like the introduction of Rick Flag here, and of course other characters from Peacemaker. It got slow a little bit, but I was very entertained by that show. Obviously, I love the Superman movie. David Corenswet was the perfect Superman, and when I get towards this review of Supergirl, he continues to be one of the best part of DCU as Superman, and I really enjoy him. I'm happy Lex Luthor is still an important piece of this universe. Nicholas Hoult played him well. Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane was great. I love Crypto. Everything about this movie I truly love, and it brightens my day every time I watch it. I watch it a few times, during these few months, every now and again, and every time I watch it, like I said before, it brightens my day. Peacemaker season 2, it was good up until the ending. The ending really frustrated me because you had this episode before the last episode where stuff was happening and it was like a good conclusion to how the season should have ended, but the last part was just a nothing burger. And while you also had the end credits that will go towards future movies like Man Tomorrow, it still felt like a waste of time because we more worried about James Gunn's interest more than the story, in my opinion. So that's basically how I feel about each of these projects. So now we're on to Supergirl, where I'll admit I wasn't really a big fan of the first trailer. Now, mind you, I really enjoyed the comic book Woman of Tomorrow. It has very beautiful visuals. The character of Kara Zor-El was very interesting, with her being traumatized by what happened to her planet being destroyed, and also meeting this girl named Ruth, who's also going through trauma and Cora doesn't want this girl to go even further trauma with trying to destroy and trying to get revenge on Krim. And so knowing the comic and then watching the trailer, I was a little bit underwhelmed by how the movie looked, how it presented itself, showing like nothing wrong with it, because I know they're trying to go through a bit, but the dog peeing in Superman newspaper is like total humor, and then everything else going on, and then Lobo being here too, but you don't really see him, and it's just like, and even when you do see Lobo, it's kind of underwhelming because you expect him to look a little bit more different, but anyways, it's neither here or there. We're gonna talk about it in the review. So I was a little bit underwhelmed for the first trailer. Now, I've also seen reviews for this movie for the past week since they put out the social reactions for this movie. And I knew it was a sign that it was going to be one of the things where it's going to be mixed because of them releasing the social reactions and letting the influencers and some of the critics talk about it. Then for them to release the actual critic reviews, for RT, Metacritic, all that. And so now they put these reviews out, and you're seeing a whole bunch of exaggerations saying this is worse than Birds of Prey, Madam Web. I'm like, come on, y'all. We can't have like a middle of the road movie. It just has to be the best or the worst. So I watched this movie tonight, and I will say Supergirl as a comic book movie is very solid. If you watch any MCU movie from like phase 1, phase 2, it's one of them run of the mill movies that is basically building up the character, introducing the character, and then making them, build up to further sequels or spin-offs that you'll get in the future. And it doesn't really benefit, from the actual story that they're in, but it will benefit them from the future is what I'm trying to say. The best thing about this movie is the development of Supergirl. Now, people have a different interpretation of Kara, Supergirl. Some of them look at her as the same as Clark Kent Superman, or one of them ditzy blondes that are sweet and kind and all that. But I feel like they needed a little bit of juice, a little bit of a difference between herself and her cousin, because you don't want there to be a female counterpart of Superman. You want Kara Zor-El to be her own character, and I feel like they did that very well here. They made her more of a drunk a little bit, just like they did in Woman of Tomorrow. Mind you, she wasn't really that much of a drunk as she is here, but I like that they added a little bit to her, weaknesses and trauma and all that, because she's very traumatized with what happened to her on Krypton. So she needs something to cope with, and also having crypto with her. Also, Millie Alok, I thought, did an amazing job portraying this character, and I definitely need to see her in Man Tomorrow because I thought she did really good. And they can build off what she's doing here and make it even better for, Man Tomorrow or whatever sequel she's about to be on. Same thing for Lobo. I thought Jason Momoa was a pretty good Lobo. We didn't get much of him in the movie because he's like sporadic throughout the movie. You don't really see him much, but when you do see him, he brings something to the scene, that charisma, that little bit of threat that he has because of his size, and you see the action that he could do with his bike is very cool, and they did a very good job with Lobo in my opinion. I thought the practical effects were really good from the monsters. I thought they was going to CGI everything, but they don't really do that. It's more of the basis of how they do with Star Wars and their monsters. They basically do the same thing here. And surprisingly, I thought the music, not the needle drops, but the actual score and music was really good, because some parts they had to get that emotional thing going on in a certain scene. And I felt that a little bit, mostly because of the music and how it was handled. So those are the things I actually like. And also, obviously, David Koresh as Superman. Anytime I see him in the scene, it's just a good scene, because David Cornsweet is a perfect Superman, and you just feel it the same way you felt it in the first Superman movie last year. And that's where my positive ends, because even though I find this movie to be solid, it could have been it should have been way better than it should, with this movie. First off, James Gunn did a disservice to this screenwriter, Ava. I don't want to butcher her last name. James Gunn showed this woman throughout the whole press tour, saying, oh, she's gonna handle some of the DC projects like Wonder Woman, Teen Titan. Then when you watch this movie and you see how they do the story of Woman of Tomorrow, you're like, damn, I'm kind of worried. The point of Woman of Tomorrow, I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't read the comic book, is that vengeance is not everything. And however you go about it, you either regret it or you live with it. That's basically the point of Woman of Tomorrow, or one of the points. Here, they did something so egregious that when something happens, I understood why people that were looking forward to the adaptation of Woman of Tomorrow were really irritated with what they did with the story. You don't have to like change much. You could change a little bit, but I think the problem is they said they were adapting Woman of Tomorrow instead of just making a Supergirl movie. That would have solved everything. Because Woman of Tomorrow is not really a Supergirl story, it's more of a Ruth story, which we are following. Who we're supposed to follow, the little girl. And they don't do that here. It's about Supergirl, but it's not about Supergirl because Ruth, the girl that's playing her is fine, but they did that actress a disservice because I thought she was annoying. They tried to do, the relationship with the family and why she want vengeance, but in my mind, I'm just like, I didn't get much of a relationship with them. They tried to do it with flashbacks, but it ain't work. The way that the little girl don't hold no accountability with what happens, it's just like, oh man, I didn't like that. That made me not like care for that character. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. Speaking of Ruth and development of characters, again, the same issue I had with Superman is the issues I'm having with this movie. This movie should have been a little bit longer and spread out. That way we can have more character development with Supergirl, and then everything would just make sense and you will feel these characters. But instead, the flashbacks we got with Cora Zor-El, good, but they were like really rushed and we didn't get much of it really. And then I wanted more of the relationship with David Cornsweet and Cora Zor-El. And Millie Alok. That would have been great to see. No, we ain't get that. Also, Krim. Krim, in my opinion, is kind of weak in the comic book. The purpose of him was for the development of Ruth and Cora Zor-El. But here you could have done something more with that character, but instead he's just a run-of-the-mill, ha hee hee, cartoon type of villain. Also, the way they over-explain stuff that's happening to the characters is kind of like, you didn't really have to explain that. Like, oh my gosh, why are there two suns? One's make me strong and one make me weak. Like those over explanations. It's just like, okay. You didn't have to go that route. You could just let the visuals speak for themselves. Even though I do like some of the Mad Max visuals that Craig Gillespie tried to go for, the moment I heard him say he was inspired by Mad Max to do this type of story for Supergirl, something just felt wrong about that. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, is supposed to be like Project Hail Mary. Lots of bright colors, lots of blue, greens. It should look like a rainbow. It should look like One Piece, where everything is just bright. But instead, it's just dull, gray. They even do the same plot points as Mad Max, and you're just like, what? You actually copied that route and put it on Supergirl. I was just amazed that they did that, and I'm very conflicted if that's good or not. But other than that, I didn't think Supergirl was the worst or the best. Just like how I felt in watching the first trailer, I just feel like this was the run-of-the-mill, solid type of superhero movie that you will get in like 2010, 2011 before the Avengers. That's the type of movie Supergirl is. This was like outdated as possible with the way they directed this movie, the way they wrote this movie, and that's just unfortunate. But what this movie did do and accomplish, and I feel it will be worth it in Man Tomorrow, is to build on the Supergirl character with Millie Alok in Man Tomorrow. And I heard Lobo was supposed to be in Man Tomorrow too. You build up on those characters from that movie, and then everything will be good and fine. It happened to Thor. Thor had a solid movie. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the worst. It was just, to make the character, just to introduce the character and to show him in Avengers. This is what this movie is for Supergirl. So I'm not really mad about it. The only thing I'm irritated about is the biases that they still have for these movies. Because Marvel has been doing this for like 10 years, and then and the DC does it, and it's just like, nah, it's worse than Madden. That's what's so annoying, man. But anyways, that's for another video. Supergirl was just solid. It wasn't that bad. If you enjoy, I'll say if you enjoy, the Marvel movies, or you just want to see a solid comic book movie, and if you're looking forward to Supergirl anyway, you should watch it, I think. But you can also watch it in stream if you want to, if you don't have nothing to do or something like that. So Supergirl not bad, it's not the worst. It's just getting scrutinized because one is DC, two is a female-led character, which I don't even want to get into, but I will, and that's just it. It got a tax on it for being those two things, and that's crazy. But anyways, I want to hear y'all thoughts on Supergirl. Tell me if you enjoyed it or if you was disappointed by it. I understand. Put in the comments down below and let me know your thoughts, and I'll catch y'all guys later. All right, y'all. Peace.